There's one thing I will give the NFL credit for, is that the past couple of years, adjusting the trade deadline to be a little later in the season creates more situations where we see more interesting deals. We see more teams make moves. You know, it works out for all parties. Like, you're talking about like buyers and sellers like you would have for Major League Baseball or even the NBA, NHL. Like, why would you not want to have that in place? And for years, they would have the damn trade deadline so early in the season, hardly anything would ever happen. But if you look at last year's trade deadline, for example, Von Miller getting sent from the Broncos to the Rams was yet another piece that the Rams added into the fold that ultimately helped contribute to them winning the Super Bowl. So it's another layer to the NFL, and it's one that I particularly like. But man, oh man, did we get a big deal come down, and we're not even at the deadline yet. This is a big one that went down the other day. The Carolina Panthers have sent Christian McCaffrey, their face of the franchise running back, to the San Francisco 49ers, who apparently were the winning bid going up against teams like the Bills and divisional rival the Rams. And the Panthers, in return for sending Christian McCaffrey to the Carolina Panthers, get a second, third, and fourth round pick in the upcoming 2023 NFL Draft, and a fifth round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. That is a lot of draft pick capital for that dude. I'm just saying. And you could also say Carolina gets a bunch of dead cap. I think it's like $8 million this year, and I can't remember if it was like $12, $13 million next year. But there's still some salary cap savings in there overall. So this is a big deal. Like, to see a team give up that many picks for a running back harkens back to the days of old, where it's not, obviously not to the level of like a Herschel Walker, Eric Dickerson type of deal. Nothing like that. But this is still a pretty big compensation package to put together for a running back for a team that right now sits at 3-3. That's a pretty big one. And you look at Christian McCaffrey and what this deal means for the San Francisco 49ers. And I start off by thinking about it like the positives. You got to start there. Like, I don't want to just bury the trade. Because you talk about Christian McCaffrey, he's only 26 years of age. This is a guy that's a versatile all-around three-down back. You know, I would certainly argue, you know, sometimes maybe a better pass catcher than he is a ball carrier, to which some of you might say, well, that means that they added a guy who's a better receiver than a running back. Well, Debo's already the better running back than receiver, and I say, that's petty. Come on now. Maybe not as crazy, but you know, you talk about Christian McCaffrey, who certainly he's had a couple of 1,000-yard rushing seasons back in 2018, 2019. You're also talking about a guy that had a 1,000-yard rushing, 1,000-yard receiving season back in 2019. Like, so there's absolutely some high-level performance potential for McCaffrey that's still only in his mid-20s. One of the big problems, though, is that Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy, he can be great, and he could absolutely be an impact player, and he could be a nice addition, a big weapon in Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco. But that, when healthy, is a mother lover, man. As he's only played 10 games the past 2 seasons. So giving up basically your entire day 2 draft for the most part. I'm not going to talk about compensatory picks because in part I think that's what led the 49ers to feel a little more comfortable with this deal, as others have talked about, is that they have compensatory picks coming. But that's still a lot. You gave up a second, a third, a fourth round pick when you already don't have a first round pick because of the Trey Lance deal in the 2021 draft. And a fifth rounder next year. That's a lot of draft pick capital to give up for a running back in the modern NFL. That's a lot. Especially for one that only played 10 games the past 2 seasons. And you can sit there and say, well, yeah, when he's healthy, he's a big-time player. But it's also been 3 years since he's been that big-time player. You get what I mean? Like, maybe he can be again, especially in Shanahan's offense, which is certainly intriguing to me, the thought of him being able to be utilized all over the place as a weapon by Shanahan in that offense. And you know he's going to a place where there are a few running backs with a more, or quarterbacks with a more elite handoff game than Jimmy G. Like when you talk about handoff games, there are a few that are more elite than Jimmy G. Tell me 3 quarterbacks that are better at handing off the ball than Jimmy G. You might not be able to find one. But what I find really interesting about this deal for the 49ers is this is a team that's had some success finding late-round undrafted running backs and getting production out of them. So why did they feel the need to go to this length to get a guy like McCaffrey? Now you look at, guys like Jeff Wilson, and I know Elijah Mitchell's out right now with the strained MCL. They spent a third-round pick on Davis Price from LSU. These are guys, especially in the case of Wilson and Mitchell, that have been able to be productive for this team in spurts. So it feels kind of odd that they would go to this length to spend that much draft pick capital to get a guy who, by the way, on the positive note, you could say that he doesn't have a ton of guaranteed money left on the books because Carolina is eating most all of that. That's true for the 49ers. They don't have to keep him long term, although you would think that he would certainly at least be in the fold for 2023, probably 2024 as well, and you'll be on the hook each of those years for about $12 million each. That's not a small amount of money. But that is a lot, again, to give up for a running back for a team that's, top 12, I think, in the league right now in rushing yards per game. I understand the 49ers need some more pop on offense, and maybe this gives it to them, but you need more pop in the passing game. It's the modern NFL. That's the thing that holds back the 49ers. It's not their damn running game. It's the freaking passing game. It's the quarterback position. It's the skill talents. Those are the things that hold them back. So I just find it really odd. And the other thing that's really odd here is that they're all in it, apparently, even though they're only 3-3 talking about the 49ers. They're in a 3-way tie for first place in their division, along with the Rams and the Seahawks. We'll see what type of staying power the Seahawks have. And the Cardinals are 3-4, and we'll see what they do the rest of the year. But, it feels like a really odd move to make for a team that may not even win their division, let alone get a really high seed in the playoffs. They might not even make the playoffs. That's not out of the question here. And imagine if they didn't. Oh, my God. They're all in, and they're only 3-3. It's just kind of odd. And I do have to point out here the irony of, now granted, I do not compare this the exact same as the Browns sitting there and having multiple opportunities to draft Deshaun Watson in 2017, and then coming back 5 years later and giving up years worth of top draft picks to go bring in a Deshaun Watson, the guy they should have damn drafted back in 2017. But I am just calling out the irony here is Christian McCaffrey was the 8th overall pick by the Panthers in that 2017 draft. If the 49ers would have just taken him over freaking Solomon Thomas, you wouldn't have had to give up a bunch of other picks. It is what it is, whatever. But it's a big move for the 49ers. I just question, what happens if and when the inevitable McCaffrey injury happens? Then what do you have to show for it? And even if he is healthy, it's going to take time to get him up to speed in the offense. And, how much better is this move really going to make that 49ers offense, that 49ers team? I guess time will tell. I just felt to me like a bit of an overpay, unnecessarily so, for a position that's not a huge weakness for them or hasn't been. They've been able to find guys that they could get by with. Meanwhile, for the Carolina Panthers, obviously you fired the fool Matt Rule. You're trying to reset, bottom out a little bit, even if you're not trying to come across that way. Everybody knows that's clearly what you're doing. We'll see if they do more dealing before the deadline. You've heard other names thrown out there like DJ Moore and Brian Burns. They've already traded Robbie Anderson to the Arizona Cardinals. And that's what they should do. They stink. They need to reset. They need to flush it out, start over. And as a result, it made a world of sense for them to trade Christian McCaffrey. Why keep him? Feels like a luxury that you can ill afford to have. You're just wasting the peak years of his career with a team around him that stinks. And you're just looking at a guy that as the day goes by, his trade value diminishes moment by moment by moment by moment. So the fact that the Carolina Panthers were able to get this much in a deal for a running back is a good look for them. It's a good get for them. Now, that doesn't speak to, like, what are they actually going to do with those picks? And they're, going to, in theory, going to be set up really well from a powerful position in terms of draft pick capital in the 2023 draft. I don't mean they have any effing clue how the hell to use it. That's a great point. But you would hope you get that many swings at the goddamn plate that eventually you could hit a couple of home runs, right? The reality is, you weren't winning shit with Christian McCaffrey anyways, right? This is what I come down to. You weren't winning shit with Christian McCaffrey anyways. You're paying him elite running back money for a situation and team that in no way could justify or support that. To a guy that played 10 games the previous 2 seasons. So it was absolutely 100% logical and the right thing to do to trade him, and to get the amount of draft pick capital they got in return was huge. Like, I'm thinking it might be like a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick this year, maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick next year. And then to see what they got and how much of it they got in 2023, I'm like, holy shit. That's about as well as you could do considering the circumstance and situation. Now, it does no good if you're the Carolina Panthers to keep trading away guys, bottom out, and then you replace them with other guys you're just going to inevitably trade away in 2 or 3 years, or they're going to bust out anyways. You always be in that same damn perpetual cycle of the abyss of being towards the bottom of the barrel in the NFL. But this had to happen. There was no real reason for them to keep McCaffrey. It's all about now what they're going to do with the draft pick capital that they've acquired. They damn sure better make sure they do a good job with it. Because this is the type of deal that should help add to your draft pick arsenal that allows you to rebuild more quickly, retool more quickly. Which, when you look at the division that the Panthers are in, you know, Brady's probably done after this season. The Saints are The Falcons are Like, there's a pathway and there's an opportunity there. There really is. To position yourself as the team that can be the standard bearer in that division the next several seasons. So these draft picks can help you do that. So, love the deal for the Carolina Panthers. If they mess up with the picks, then it doesn't matter at the end of the day. But they had to trade them. It just didn't make any sense for them to keep them. As far as the 49ers, this one just feels odd. You know, it feels like they got pimped out in the process because the Bills and Rams were also sniffing around, so that obviously, due to the competition, drove up the price. We'll have to see how McCaffrey is utilized in that Shanahan office. I can envision things and be like, man, he's a fantastic fit for what Shanahan wants to do. But again, at the end of the day, I come back to the running game's not really their problem. It's the passing game. And especially like explosive down the field, big passing game plays, especially in big games and big spots and big moments. And McCaffrey absolutely does not help you with that. He can provide you more options in the passing game, like he could help you in the short and intermediate area, but home run threat down the field, stretching the field, he is not. That's a big contract to have to pay the next couple of years potentially for McCaffrey. A lot of draft pick capital to go all in for a team that right now is 3-3 with what effectively is your backup quarterback. We'll see how that goes. Good luck with that.